This episode of Another Happy Pod is going to contain spoilers. If you've not experienced the content yourself, please go ahead and do so before coming back and listening to the boys ramble on about it. Thank you very much.
Welcome back to another episode of Another Happy Pod. Today I am again joined by Nathan.
Wagwan, I got COVID.
Yep, Nathan is very ill this week. He's begged me to do the intro, so I decided to just throw him under the bus and immediately request for him to talk. Yeah, a bit of a mess up on my part. Today we're going to be talking about the Doctor Who Season 3 finale, which is it's actually not a 3-episoder, according to Russell T Davies, who was the showrunner.
It's not. I wouldn't class it as a 3-parter either.
Really?
I would class it as, I would say it's a standalone episode, which the last 5 minutes lead into the next 2-parter.
Okay, all right, that's fair enough. But those episodes are Utopia, The Sound of Drums, and The Last of the Time Lords. They were the story that actually brought back the Master for the new run of Doctor Who. I think they came out in 2007. Is that about right?
Yeah, as far as I remember, that sounds about right. Yeah.
Okay, so basically, I'm going to jump straight in and ask you, because we've kind of got wavering opinions on this. Where do you stand with Doctor Who in general? Not just like this era, but in general since the revival in 2005.
In general, I love Doctor Who, man. I've got I really do have a soft spot in my heart for that show. So when Doctor Who first came back in 2005, I didn't watch it at first. It wasn't until the second series with David Tennant that I started watching it. I remember specifically, I was at my dad's house at the time having a bath, and then he said... Yeah, I know. And then he called to me and said, Nathan, the new Doctor Who's on. Do you want to watch it? I've never watched Doctor Who at this point. I had no idea what it is. I'm like,
yeah, what the hell is Doctor Who, Dad?
Yeah, I was like, I mean, all right, sure, why not? We move. Let's give it a watch. So I watched it. It was the weird episode where they go to New Earth and there's cat people and everyone's got coronavirus.
That was the first like proper David Tennant story that wasn't the Christmas special, right?
Yeah, the very first episode of season 2, New Earth, or whatever it's called. And it's probably terrible if I go back and watch it today, but back then I loved it. It was great. So I carried on watching the rest of series 2 week to week, and then after that I got the DVDs because this was before Netflix or anything like that was a thing. And then I watched all of series 1 with Christopher Eccleston, and from there I just pretty much fell in love with it. Even to today, I think I still love it just as much. I always get really excited to watch Doctor Who. I'm not going to lie, the last season probably wasn't the best for me. There's some great moments overall with Jodie and Sacha Dhawan as the Master, which he's just amazing. The writing was a little bit weird, but it's still great. I still enjoy it and everything like that. But yeah, overall, I really, really like the show. Definitely been a big part of my life.
Yeah, I'd say it's been a pretty decent chunk of mine as well. Like my first introduction was to Doctor Who was, again, like yourself. I was younger. I had no idea what it was because obviously the last time it was on was decades and decades ago. I
think it was 16 years between the cancellation and the revival.
Okay, so not decades and decades, but a decade. I wasn't alive, put it that way. My introduction, I was at my nan's house and I went in and my cousins were watching it. And this was actually the Parting of the Ways episode right at the end.
All right, yeah.
Which is the finale to season 1 and the regeneration episode from Christopher Eccleston to David Tennant. And I went in and the first thing I saw, and quite literally the first introduction I had to Doctor Who, was a man's head blowing up and another man's head being like just kind of there now instead. And obviously in that episode there's no explanation to it, so I've just gone, people's heads are blowing up in this show. this is not for me. But obviously I gave it more of a chance, watched it just because I think my cousins were then going on to watch the next one, and just again fell in love with it. Started with David Tennant's series, went back to watch Christopher Eccleston's, and I've kind of thoroughly enjoyed it ever since. But the reason I loved Doctor Who when it started was the cheesiness to it, like the over the top cheesiness. And then I feel like towards the end of Matt Smith's era, it got a little confusing in the plot elements and had a lot of, the whole your life matters. Every companion's life was the most important thing. Like the Doctor always had to be the most important thing. It wasn't just the Time Lord and the companion anymore. It had to be every single life that was surrounding the Doctors meant something. And I for me, it got a little bit old. But then, yeah, since Chris Chibnall took over, I really enjoyed the first season he did. The second season he did, I thought was pretty crap. But yeah, no, that's just kind of where I stand with it. But the episodes that we're reviewing today are in prime Who for me. This was when I was really loving the show. So watching these episodes back, I've had a very good time personally. But I don't know, how's it been for you? Because you prefer the latter half of Doctor Who, don't you?
Yeah, I really do. So season 5 to 10, to me, that's the glory years of Doctor Who, really. Matt Smith and Peter Capaldi's eras. Matt Smith is my favourite Doctor. After that, I would say is Peter Capaldi. Both of them do an amazing job. And yeah, there was something about the storytelling and the writing in those seasons which I really connected with much more than the earlier ones. It's interesting that you talk about the cheesiness of Doctor Who and everything like that, because I think you're absolutely right. I think it did definitely lose the cheesiness aspect to it. It definitely got a bigger budget, and it certainly took itself more seriously. For me, that worked out for the better. I mean, as a kid, yeah, I absolutely loved the cheesiness factor and everything like that. But going back and then watching it now as a 26-year-old man, I don't think I would have liked this show if I started watching it from today.
Oh, I completely agree, but that's the thing. My love for especially the later seasons of Doctor Who, the earlier seasons of Doctor Who, they're built on nostalgia. I enjoy them because I loved watching them as a kid. I just remember, to be fair, I wasn't even that young. It's just thinking back to those moments when I first experienced them, when the Master came back, and then we got more of the Time Lords, and then we had all of the plot elements that I feel Russell T Davies was so good at doing, despite the fact that they were blatantly obvious twists and all of this. I feel Russell T Davies was just a brilliant showrunner for that era of Doctor Who, and his style perfectly paired itself with what the show was supposed to be at that time. But let's move on to Utopia. What are your thoughts as a whole of this episode?
It's a weird one. It's definitely one of the more cheesier ones, like we were saying, and definitely one as well where they clearly try to save some money on the budget. I know that obviously, like I said, Doctor Who's got a much bigger budget now than it did back then, and that's just clear. But this was just running around like a quarry in Wales for 30 minutes or so.
Yeah.
It was
one of the points I made on this episode was that the budget shows so much. There's a point where the Doctor, towards the kind of latter half of the episode, the Doctor's meant to be fixing some kind of big technical thing, and the cables he's just plugging in are just jacks. They're just audio jacks.
I know exactly what you're talking about. And it does it again. Derek Jacobi as well. There's a moment he's just working on the machinery when he becomes the Master, but he's literally just flicking switches over and over again. That's literally all he's doing. He's just going back and forth, flicking the same switches. Yeah.
Maybe he's just made a mistake and he flicks it and he's like, no, it's the wrong switch. Then flip. Maybe that's what's going on. The structure of this one was a little bit different, because this is one of the few Doctor stories, at least in the earlier days, that there was a 3-companion shake-up. And it's actually the return of the Captain Jack, last seen in The Parting of the Ways, to my knowledge.
In Doctor Who, anyway.
Yeah, in Doctor Who. He had his whole kind of side thing in Torchwood, which is a great show as well. We should talk about that at some point.
We should, actually.
So he hasn't been seen by the Doctor. For Jack, in about 100 years. For the Doctor, who knows how long. But
I've actually got a note on that. I've actually got a note on how long it's been for the Doctor, because so this was series 1 for the Doctor was when he was with Jack, when he was Christopher Eccleston, series 1, and he was 900 years old. Okay.
Yep.
He was 900 years old. Okay. Then at this point, he's David Tennant. He's only 2 years older. He's 902 at this point, okay? He's 902. But the way he talks about it, he talks as if it was like centuries ago. Like there's an actual line, like when Martha and the Doctor land in Cardiff to refuel, she asks him about like the earthquake in Cardiff and if that was him. And he was like, oh yeah, that was ages ago, a lifetime. I was a different man back then. Obviously, that's a joke because of like Christopher Eccleston, but he's still talking about his experience with Jack as if it was just eons and centuries ago and everything like that. And I'm like,
2 years.
It's been 2 years, man.
And for Jack,
and especially
it's been
for someone
100.
who is. Yeah, exactly. And especially for someone who is essentially immortal, that's like the blink of an eye for you.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
That's very true. That is very. I never thought about it like that, actually. So it starts off pretty fast paced. So like you say, the Doctor and Martha land to refuel. Like, there's a rift in time and space that runs conveniently underneath every episode of Doctor Who where it's ever been filmed, which is Cardiff. I don't know if that's
I mean, why not?
I don't know if that's because there's a BBC headquarters in Wales, or if it's just because it's
There
really
is,
cheap.
yeah. There's a BBC Studios is in Cardiff, and that's where they shoot.
So that's where there's a convenient time rift in time and space that runs under. So no, they stop there to refuel, and Jack has a very energetic sequence where he actually jumps onto the TARDIS as it's dematerializing, and clings on whilst it travels to the end of the universe.
Yeah, he's just holding onto the side there. He's essentially just hugging the TARDIS while it flies through the vortex. But it doesn't turn conveniently though. It doesn't rotate, just so you can see him.
Yeah, no, you need to be able to see him at that point.
Yeah.
There's a moment that I really like there because it's the first time the Doctor sees him, and the Doctor sees him on a little screen. Sees him running. I don't know what camera he's tapped into for that, because the
TARDIS has like so many external cameras just everywhere.
It's a really dynamic close up, brilliantly lit on Jack's face. That isn't blurry at all. So it is quite a confusing thing to wrap your head around. But it's the first time. The reason I like it is because when the Doctor sees him, he's about to just straight up leave him again, and almost succeeds in doing so. And that is echoed later on in the episode when Jack has to go into that red room filled with radiation. And it's the first time them two chat about how they're both now essentially immortal. And the Doctor has, like, for the first time you see, is kind of wary of Jack, because now he is kind of referred to as just like a fact of time and space. And he could really have the potential to mess quite a lot of things up, and this was when the laws of time were a bit stricter in Doctor Who than they became. So the whole things, the fixed point in time and space, was a bit more heavily leaned on in this season, I think. But yeah, what did you think of Jack being back in this episode? Do you think it was necessary?
I'm always more than happy to have Jack back. He's I think for a good reason as well. He's a lot of people's favorite, maybe not favorite, but one of the favorite characters in the sort of Doctor Who family. People have been like clamoring for him to come back for a while, and like he recently showed up in the most recent season, only for a little bit, but like everyone lost their mind, and it was great to see him again.
It was great to see him. He did absolutely nothing.
he did nothing. He did nothing, but it was still great to have him back. But yeah, it's absolutely maybe not necessary, but it's definitely fun to have him back. Always welcome John Barrowman. He's a great actor and just plays that part so well. He basically just lives that role essentially. And yeah, and the scene that you mentioned in the sort of like radiation room and everything like that, that's probably my favorite scene in this entire episode. Just the moment where you kind of get to just take a step back and take a breather from all the intense and weird story that's going on around it, and just take a moment with these two immortal beings essentially, and just take a look at how they see things. Yeah, it's really good. I really like that scene. Like I said, probably the best scene in the episode.
Yeah, I think for most people it's probably because I think it's the only scene that really, like you say, gives you that breather, gives you a moment to actually catch up. I think Tennant is so good at playing Ten's like desperation and loneliness, and kind of he has the tragic side to him, and it's often kind of it takes the backseat to a lot of his excitement and how much because he comes to this place and essentially it's the human race on their last legs. It's the last of the human beings. They're on some desolate planet at the end of the world. And they essentially have one chance to escape in a rocket.
In a terrible CGI rocket.
Yeah, it's very bad. It's a product of its time, but even for 2007, it's pretty shambolic.
Like I said, it was probably made for 25 quid, this entire episode. So
more than likely, yeah. I think Tennant is so good at playing that kind of sadness, and it's definitely present in that scene.
Oh, it really is. There's Tennant's always good at portraying just that raw emotion of the Doctor. Like there's the moment where Martha tells him about the watch, and then she tells him about Yana's watch, and like he just can't process it. Like just the look on his face as he's trying to figure out exactly what that means, and if that is a Time Lord, who it could be, and why would they be here, and what does that mean if they are someone friendly or if they're not someone friendly. How is he going to deal with all of this? And he's just trying to process all of those emotions and thoughts and feelings in a matter of seconds. And it does kind of like short circuit him out. He doesn't really know how to deal with it, and he's great at showing that, I think.
I think that's one of my favourite moments. Obviously, I'll move on to the Yana moment in a minute, but there is the Yana moment. Of which there is a big one. Oh boy, is it! No, the reason I like that, like you say, is because there's a million thoughts going on in his head when she says, "Oh, he's got the watch just like yours," and you see Ten basically go, "Oh, fuck."
Exactly.
Because that could mean something amazing. It could mean that he is not alone. It could mean that all of his sadness could be saved, or it could be Rassilon, who he's had a very treacherous past with. It could be the Master, which it is, and then it could be very good or very bad.
Well, the interesting thing is, by this point, and I'm talking strictly from the revival here, because when I watched this, I had watched absolutely zero classic episodes of Doctor Who, didn't know any of the story, had zero idea who the Master was. He was a completely new character from this episode for me, okay? So I had none of that backstory. So from my perspective, and from the perspective of what I would imagine would be quite a large chunk of the audience as well, up until this point, we've only heard of the Time Lords as incredible, better than the best of the best sort of beings, like these guardians of the universe who look after time and all of that. And there's like the moment in the beginning of this season where where Ten talks to Martha about his people, and he finally lets her in on what happened and talks about his planet. And it's just done with such like beauty and almost romance to it, really, that he's talking about his own people and his own kind. So we up until this point, we only really have that kind of romanticized idea of the Time Lords, because that's how the Doctor has essentially chosen to remember them and chosen to show them to us as well. Now we're getting our first sort of glimpses. Oh, that actually might not be the case. The Time Lords quite possibly quite a large race, so it's obvious that there might be some ones there who have ill intentions, or they're quite evil, essentially. And it's definitely interesting, and it was definitely like a moment that kind of caught you off guard, especially did for me anyway.
Yeah, no, I really liked it. And like you say, there was probably a large chunk of the audience that were thinking another Time Lord is brilliant news for the Doctor. And then you really kind of get let in pretty early on in a very unsubtle sequence. There's
There is. I've got a note on a note on this. I don't know if Russell T Davies knows what subtlety is.
Yeah, no, definitely not.
And I'll get more into that a little later. But there's throughout this 3-parter or 2-parter and 2.5-parter, there is just some very obvious moments which we'll get into.
Yeah. Well, I feel like we can't talk about everything about this 3-parter without moving on from Utopia pretty soon. I wanted to touch on.
I did just want to quickly mention while we're just going on Utopia. Derek Jacobi is great. He's over the top and he's camp, but still he's incredible. Okay, and he was wasted.
Thank you.
Yeah, man. I would love to see some more of Derek Jacobi as the Master, because he's like one of the classically trained great British actors. Like, he is an incredible actor, and the fact that they got him to do this weird little sci-fi show and just have him kill a bug, it's like
yeah. I know Derek Jacobi from 2 things. I know him from being the Master for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And I know him from being the king that dies in the live-action Cinderella. And in both of those things, he unsurprisingly just shines. Like, in this, the moment where he opens the watch and he has the realization that he is this, to the Master, like this almighty being, leagues of and millions of kind of levels above these humans that a minute ago he was so sympathetic towards. And it's that moment where Chantho realizes something has changed, and even she has known him for, they say in the episode, 17 years, and he just kills her, straight up kills her, and he just, with no remorse, and you can see on her face that she immediately clocks, you're not Professor Yana, what's gone on?
Yeah. Well,
it's fantastic.
She pulls out a piece on him.
Oh, she does. She draws the gat on my man.
She's ready to pull the trigger.
Oh, she throws down, man, big time. And yeah, like, look, I just wish that there was. Do you know what? I feel like if the regeneration came a little bit later and he had about half an episode into the Sound of Drums, and then there was a fake out where like the Doctor found a way to defeat the Master, and he just straight up regenerated into the younger John Sim and was like, now I'm even worse. I feel like that could have been better, because sadly, although I think his purpose is brilliant in this, and I understand why the Master would immediately regenerate, because it's a vanity ego thing, and he wants to be young and strong like the new David Tennant Doctor is, but I feel just he serves his purpose well. I wish I got to see his interpretation of a Master. I really do.
I'm pretty sure he's done some Big Finish stuff, and that he's done some. I think they call him the War Master. I think, and that he's done some like sort of audio dramas as the Master. But yeah, I would absolutely love to just like John Sim is great. I can't deny that he's great, and he is absolutely insane, and he plays that amazingly well. But there's just something about Derek Jacobi which I really feel like got like the more sinister and evil nature of the Master down, which could have been really good to see.
Yeah, I think Derek Jacobi did great, but to level Tennant's Doctor, you need Sim's Master, and I've actually written down. They are the perfect like pair of Master and Doctor that I think has been on screen. I know you'd probably argue for 12 and Missy.
I do really like 12 and Missy. I think they have a great dynamic, but I wouldn't necessarily disagree with you. But 12 and Missy is a different dynamic than 10 and the Master, though. Yeah.
But the reason I've said that is because I think 10 and John Sim's Master are very much so like they're both the right amount of camp, cheesy. They're both ridiculously expressive. And they both really carry this element of tragic backstory like brilliantly. I think it's more subtle for John Sim's Master, but those moments where you kind of realize the horror he went through as a child and why the Master is the way he is, he does that brilliantly. But let's move on to the Sound of Drums, because this is a three-parter, and so far we've only touched on 1/3 of it. Where would you like to start with the Sound of Drums? Because boy, oh boy, is this an episode.
Boy, oh boy, is this an episode. All right. All right. So here's a note that I have as well. Quite a lot of my notes center around Russell T Davies. Okay.
Oh, no. I love him. Leave him alone, man.
No. I like him too, okay? He's done some great work, but oh boy, did I have some realizations watching this. Okay.
Is it his rampant sexism?
Well, I'm definitely going to touch on that. But first of all, let me sizzle you with just this. First of all, Russell T Davies has absolutely no idea how politics works.
Yeah, it's so true.
Like, you can't just become the prime minister. Okay, that's like, you need to have a party. You need to be the leader of that party. You need to hold the majority of seats in parliament. You can't just be as an individual. You can't just be elected as the prime minister. That's not how British politics works.
I get that, but I'm going to forgive it because it's aimed at kids, man. Like, this is,
it is,
and it does, like, it has the kind of the realistic depiction of Downing Street, with them using the exact same set they used in season 1. And I think there's an element, if you can, like, look, it's not like the whole cabinet gets murdered.
Yeah.
Right. Almost instantaneously, and then he's just doing broadcasts, and then, like, he's still got like a whole weekend being the prime minister before the big invasion starts, that people presumably just go, oh, that cabinet meeting's going on for a long time. They've been in there for 2 days.
There's a moment where, like, he's walking into that cabinet meeting and people are just handing him various red files. And one of them, someone says annual budget, okay? Like, all right. Again, I know it's a kid's show, but the annual budget isn't just something that's just passed on to the Prime Minister willy-nilly. That's set up by the Chancellor. It's something that's done with great care and detail and is announced on, like, a big platform. It's not just handed off willy-nilly. It just seems like... I mean, I get it. Yeah, you're absolutely right. It is aimed mainly at kids, and they just want to keep it light and breezy. It's probably because lately it's hard not to focus on politics lately with everything that's going on, and so that has been at the forefront of my mind, and maybe that's like a big part of it. But yeah, just watching this, I just realised this just would not happen.
Well, I'm going to tell you something else that wouldn't happen.
Oh no, here we go.
So the ending of Utopia sees them kind of. Sees the Master use the TARDIS and go away, essentially, leaving the Doctor, Martha, and Jack stranded. They use Jack's vortex manipulator to get back. And I would go as far as to say I think this is possibly one of the worst uses of special effects I've ever seen in my life. And it's the opening shot of them kind of materializing into modern-day Earth through the time vortex. And what they do is they just get a little bit of the time vortex swirling, and then they all just fade in.
Yeah.
And it is awful.
It is. It's there's quite a lot of really bad special effects moments in this, but yeah, you're right. That is a pretty bad one.
So I've got down here, and I wrote down in my notes while watching this episode, the Master is 100% not afraid of being cancelled by the Me Too movement. And that is a point I'd like to really drum home for, if you pardon the pun. He is in this two-parter. He is so sexist. It's unbelievable.
That's absolutely right. Okay, you're absolutely right. But that is, I think, just a characterization of the Master in general. I think even going back to the classic eras, he's always been someone who just disregarded women and didn't really see them as a threat. And that's especially evident in not the most recent, but the episode where Johnson came back and he was interacting with Missy. There's a lot of just rampant sexism from him there as well.
Yeah.
Talking about how he's about to turn into a woman and everything like that. I think you're absolutely right. That is a characterization of him I also think it's a bit of a characterization of Russell T Davies as well, though.
Oh, it's a big statement. It's a bold statement. It's also very possible that it's a product of its time. The world was a lot less conscious of this stuff back when.
Oh no, you're absolutely right. Yeah, the world's a different place than it was 13 years ago or whatever.
Yeah,
and yeah. But
you
still,
pass this script to a producer now, you will never work again. It's bad.
Lucy, the character of Lucy, okay, what does she do apart from get kissed and say how much she loves him and get beaten up and say how much she loves her murderous psychopathic husband and then shoot him? What does she do?
So the character of Lucy is an interesting one for me because she's very much meant to emulate the other side of how humans can be manipulated when you show them the power and the majesty of time and space in the universe. So the Doctor travels with companions to show them the beauty of the universe, essentially. And the Master, the first place he took Lucy, was to basically say, this is where human beings end up. Your race is inferior. And I do feel like the character of Lucy has some degree of redemption, but sadly there's little else. She is a bit of a punching bag / just kind of thing for the Master to present.
She's an object. She's literally she's an accessory to the Master throughout the entire story, essentially. That's really all she does. Earlier, I did say Russell T Davies doesn't know what subtlety is. I think that's most evident in how he chose to dress Lucy for the for the last of the Time Lords.
Oh, in the red dress.
Yeah, the red dress throughout the entire episode. There's absolutely no subtlety there whatsoever.
It's the of mice and men thing, isn't it? The the wife,
Curly's wife or whatever.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the first time you get to see the Master being the Master when he's not in his kind of post-regeneration madness is the cabinet meeting. And he has the moment where he gasses them all. And there's a moment that I just love. And it's the really, like, you know, let's say exactly what he is. He's a big, fat, dirty Tory.
And like the other guy, the minister or whatever.
And he makes a joke and he says, he immediately goes, "Oh yes, very, very funny, sir. If we could move on to the matter of policy." And the Master just puts a gas mask on. He's like, "Oh, why are you wearing that gas mask?" or whatever. And he has that moment where every time he has to repeat himself, he takes off the mask. Even though you can obviously hear what he's saying. And then there's that brilliant moment where he doesn't take off the mask and he goes, "Because of the gas." And then everyone just dies. And you've got that Tory going, "You're insane," which is brilliant. It is brilliant.
I do really like that moment as well. I think what I enjoy most about that scene is the moment after it, when they're all just dead, and he's kind of just like laying across the table, and he's just tapping out the rhythm, the rhythm of the drums.
Who is he looking at in that scene? That's always bothered me.
I don't know, to be honest. I don't know if he's looking at anyone or if he's just like kind of like staring blankly into space or whatever.
It's a conscious choice. He is eyeballing straight down the lens. So I think that's just another. Let's give it away to just another cheesy moment.
It's definitely a cheesy moment, but it's one that I kind of like, though. It's one that kind of works. A cheesy moment which definitely does not work for me is so there's the moment where they're in Martha's flat and they're watching.
The bomb?
Yeah, and they're watching the broadcast of the Master, and he's saying, I can't exactly remember what he's saying, but he's saying something that hints towards Martha, every medical student. And then the Doctor just quickly turns around to Martha, and then they turn around to the gigantic TV, the classic CRT TV around, and there is just the most fucking cartoonish stick of dynamite that I have ever seen
I
on
wrote
the
in my
back of that
notes.
CV.
I wrote in my notes, the bomb is the most bomby-looking bomb I've ever seen in the history of bombs.
They might as well have just got that from like a fucking Warner Brothers cartoon. That's how
Yeah.
ridiculous it is.
It is very, very bad. But there's another moment he does that, which I think's brilliant. So it's not to say that those moments don't work. It's where you put them and how you know how subtle you want to be with them. There's the moment that I like when he first kind of starts, when the episode first begins, and it's one of Russell T Davies' classic news broadcast information dumps.
They will show you it all around the world, and
and there's the moment where he goes, I'd go so far as to say what this country really needs right now is a doctor. And then you've got that kind of title sequence, which I do think is the best title sequence. Yeah,
it's definitely a good one. Yeah.
So that was a moment that I really liked, and that's one of the moments I think did really well. That kind of lack of subtlety, that cheesiness is allowed when it's cool, but not when it's a stick of dynamite blowing up a flat. Leading on from that though, with the dynamite thing, I really enjoyed Martha in the middle section of this episode, because it's the first time you see her really defiant against the Doctor and saying, this is the moment the Doctor has really missed the mark. And it's the first time we see Martha's family kind of directly in the firing line. So every time the Doctor says, stay back or don't do that, Martha, why are you on the phone? And she just turns around. She's basically like, dude, shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
I'm going to do what I want to do.
That is definitely, you're absolutely right. That is a great moment. Unfortunately, one of the few moments that Martha gets to shine, unfortunately, I don't think she's a very well-written character. Because I think too much of her story was the fact that she fancied the Doctor and he didn't like her back, unfortunately. But the section in the middle there, like where they get into the car and they go to her parents' house, and she basically just screams at him and tells him to shut up because it's his fault. I did really like that moment. Yeah, it's like a moment where she gets to stand on her own 2 feet, really. And if she had more of that throughout the season, she probably would have had a better place in my sort of memories and rankings of the companions, I guess. I
think Martha she's no one's favourite. She's undeniably good, and it's a great performance, but she's just so underutilized in every possible way she could be. Even The Last of the Time Lords is her episode, essentially. She's the one that saves the day while the Doctor's kind of sat in a bird cage. And even then, it becomes, if everyone just thinks real hard about the Doctor, he'll be able to do it. Martha's the one that saved that. If she just skipped back for a year and did nothing, they'd be screwed. But yeah, is there any other moments you wanted to talk on with the sound of drums?
So with the sound of drums, there is the moment where the president is talking to the nation, and I'm not going to get too much into the president, apart from he's kind of weird. But actually, that's another thing. Another thing about how Russell T Davies has no idea how politics work. The president calls himself the president-elect, which means that he's not even the president yet. Like, he is, like, say if by some miracle Joe Biden wins the election in November, from November to January, he will be the president-elect, but Donald Trump will still be president. So he's not even the president. He's not even in charge. Why is he doing this? That makes no sense whatsoever.
Yeah, I feel like the episode is a little bit... They try to pretend they really get it with the whole, like, first contact can't be on any, like, soil. It needs to be up in the air or overseas. Kind of in, like, the no man's land region, essentially. But then, you're absolutely right. They've got the way that, like, these people... they just don't talk to each other in this way. Like, he has the line like, since Britain elected an ass? Yes. And it's just like, no, come on, that's not how you do it. It's a good line. Great line. I
love it.
I like it when he walks away and the master goes, "The last president of the United States." That is a good line. I've got a few. Go on.
I was going to say before I got sidetracked into that. Yeah, like when the president is talking to the nation and they're about to do the first contact, it's showing you like scenes from what I'm assuming is around the world. Like there's people in the cafe watching it on the TV, and then there's this one which they occasionally sprinkle in, which I'm assuming is supposed to be some kind of dorm room in America, because they have given these people every single American stereotype that you could possibly think of. Like the guys there wearing a Letterman jacket. There's just like a Route 66 sign on the wall for some reason.
Oh my God.
There's another guy in like an oversized football jersey drinking a Budweiser. They have just gone wall to wall with every. It's like if you walk into like a TGI Fridays or something like that, and that's what it was like.
Yeah, no, They do that a lot. Like you'll also
really
notice
do.
that like whenever they cut to a calf, there's no like old people in the calf. It's always like builders in the calf. Like it's exactly what you'd expect in that location always.
Yeah.
Another thing, I wanted to say a few things just before we move on from this episode. So there's the moment where the journalist screams. That was way over the top, and I hated it.
But she screamed for so long as well because he kept
like,
opening the door.
Yeah, and you have to assume it was going on. She wasn't just waiting for the door to open. And every time they did, it got higher pitched.
Yeah,
I was like, "What is this about?"
Awful.
I can only assume that the Tocqueville are just dissecting her or something. One of the moments I really liked was the key, the perception filter key.
Yeah.
It's one of the instances where I feel like the filmmaking element of this episode was actually really interesting. The whole, like, when you look at the Doctor, you kind of, the camera turned to the side and he was like, no, over here, and then it pulled back.
Yeah.
I really like that. I feel Doctor Who misses out on a few of those things because it's so many crash zooms. There's so many, like, close-ups.
Extreme close-ups, which we'll get into.
And I feel like I really like that. And although it was a one shot, I thought it was a cool inclusion. I quite liked it.
No, yeah, you're right. That was a cool little moment. Quite good. I enjoyed that too.
Okay, right. Let's move on to Last of the Time Lords. I think this is where you've sunk your teeth in and you've got a lot to say, right?
Last of the Time Lords is, boy, is it an episode. It's it just makes no sense. The whole thing. It's just really. This is like one of those moments of like peak RTD Doctor Who for me. This and I don't want to skip ahead too much, but I don't think it's any more as absurd as when the Doctor is somehow flying in the Valiant. Well, first of all, he's a weird fleshy CGI Yoda. And then his cage just entirely dissolves because of love and thought or some reason. And then he just floats and changes back into the old man, first of all, so you know he's going backwards. And then he changes back into David Tennant, young and fresh. And then he's just flying, and he's got these weird kind of force powers that he can use, and he can like move things with his mind now for some reason. And he's just...
Can I just give you this quote? Because I wrote it down, and I feel like it could be quite fun to dissect this. So the concept, for those who haven't seen the episode or haven't watched it in a long time, is that the Master is controlling the Earth through 15 satellites that's kind of distributed on a mobile phone network, essentially.
The Archangel Network.
The Archangel Network. And doing this kind of enforces a drum beat of that 4 beats that the Master keeps saying, the drums, the never-ending drums. And what it does is it keeps the world thinking about Harold Saxon, and then later on kind of reinforces the fear that the universe holds, or the Earth holds for him. And kind of just keeps it in place, so there's not really many uprisings or anything like that. It just kind of keeps everyone in check. So the idea here is that Martha goes around the world spreading the name of the Doctor, and when the Doctor thinks, when everyone in the world uses the same countdown to think of the Doctor's name. Also, it's not the Doctor's name. It's just the Doctor.
It's not. Yeah, it's an alias.
Yeah. And then the Master kind of has this moment where he goes, oh no, that makes sense. Right, satellites, I don't understand the technology behind them, but I can appreciate that it is at least in fact made of technology. You know, zeros and ones that theoretically, when put together in the correct order, mean things work. And the Doctor says, and Nathan, I feel like you're going to enjoy this, I've had a whole year to tune myself into the psychic network and integrate with its matrices. What the fuck does that mean?
I don't know.
It makes
and
no
I don't
sense.
I don't think Russell T Davies does either. I think this is just that classic Doctor Who thing of choosing a few different words that kind of sound science-y and just going with it. Because like there's that classic joke of reverse the polarity of the neutron flow. Means absolutely fuck all. There's no logical reasoning behind that phrase whatsoever, but it's something that comes up in Doctor Who all the time. Like it's been there since like the fucking 60s or whatever. It just always comes up. And I think that's just what this is. Like, was it like tune himself into the matrices or something, was it?
The psychic network and integrate with its matrices.
Yeah, I think he's just gone, oh yeah, that sounds kind of technical. Yeah, let's go for that. That works.
I was typing it in and matrices auto-corrected itself to mattress. And I honestly feel like he could have let that go in the script and it just would have been like, oh, okay. So like I said, it's based off of technology. How this then results in it reversing alien technology for aging is able to kind of transmit a blue light around the Doctor.
I mean, you could argue that there is a psychic network and there is some kind of level of psychic connection to it, but it's already established in the prior episode that the way the psychic connection works is just a low-level 4-beat signal inside your phone. And that's it. It's not exactly like transmitting brain waves or anything like that. It's not exactly thought-powered or anything.
I thought to myself about this. If the case is that when everyone thinks of the same thing, it kind of takes on this superpower, godlike abilities. Wasn't the whole purpose of the psychic network to get everyone thinking about Harold Saxon? So surely when he was elected, he kind of should have just theoretically started glowing and flying. I don't know.
Maybe that was his mistake. Maybe because he didn't get everyone on Earth to think of him at once. Because it has to be all at once. Then maybe that's why. Also, that makes no sense either. She was traveling the world for like a year. If some random girl came up to you and said, hey, look, in 10 months' time, okay, I need you to be at this place at this time, and I just need you to think the word doctor. Or just even say it. Just say the word doctor, all right? Cool. Anyway, bye.
I'd forget, man. That's 10 months have passed.
There's no way I'm remembering that. What are you doing?
Also, do time zones factor into this? Do they have to wake up at like 5 a.m.
Probably
to do it?
I just go to bed, man. I only got time for that.
Yeah, exactly. Like you've set your reminder, you wake up, your alarm doesn't go off, you thought, oh, look, one person in the world didn't do it, now we're bollocks.
I have another note on this episode here. Soldiers. Whose side are they on? Because those guys are going back and forth like it's...
Whoever's got the biggest stick at that point, I think it is.
Literally, like those guys, okay, they have been enforcing the Master's rule for the past year. They have been clearly doing some terrible and evil things. But then at the end of the episode, they're all just like, yay, and working with the Doctor and Jack and just having a good time. We've been like, all right, are we just going to ignore all the war crimes and atrocities that you have committed over the past year?
They've killed, in the same episode, the same group of soldiers shot Jack.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, they flat out executed him.
Exactly. And now here they are going to destroy the TARDIS paradox and cuff the Master because conveniently they're just on the Doctor's side now for some reason.
I had a bit of an issue with the concept of Martha traveling the entire world in 1 year when there's heavy travel restrictions in place. You see her at the beginning kind of get off this boat.
a very rickety boat as well, like a very small wooden
am
boat.
I supposed to believe she's crossed like oceans in this thing?
I think it would be believable from France, maybe, because that's a relatively short distance.
Yeah.
But anywhere else, and you are 100% dead.
She's on a tight deadline as well, because let's say she does go to every country in the world, as is said in the story. She's got what, maximum 6 hours in each, and that's not including sleeping.
Yeah, her time would be extremely limited if she's got to travel the whole world. And yeah, there's no planes to get around. She's even bloody kind of amazed that this bloke is driving a car at one point as well. So clearly she's not getting about in a car either. So,
I feel like Martha she's got the boat, and if there's no water, she's just dragging the boat. that's what's going on with it.
Yeah, it doesn't really make any sense.
So we jumped ahead a little bit to the ending. I wanted to go back to the beginning. I'm going to make a quick point of saying there's no point putting Jack in chains if he's proven on multiple occasions he can just break those chains.
I mean, yeah, you're absolutely right, but there's no logic to this episode, though. Yeah, Doctor Who.
There's not. I want to say as well, I feel like we're going into this, and it's a bit against the kind of idea of the pod. I love this episode with all of my heart. I think it's brilliant, but it's very fun to take the piss out of this.
I used to love this episode. But I just think, but looking back on it now, it does not hold up for me at all. There's a few like older Doctor Who stories which are like that. Another one of them being The End of Time, Part 1 and 2. Again, just peak RTD, man. Just peak RTD.
Yeah, it's true. So when this episode picks up, there's been a year, because obviously Martha's had to travel, and she's in like the last 2 days of her year of traveling. Before she has to make it back to the Valiant. So a year's passed. Master comes in and he's playing the Scissor Sisters, and it's great. I really like that sequence. However, what has everyone been doing for 365 days?
Well, the Jones families are like maids now or something.
Yeah, I guess so.
Lucy has put in hair extensions and got a new dress. The Master has hired some masseuses, which he now uses to taunt Lucy, clearly. Martha has been walking across the earth, apparently. The Doctor's been doing fuck all. Yeah. Absolutely nothing. Sat on his arse.
This is where I wanted to touch on your comment about Lucy and the Sound of Drums. The only indication that anything more than a weekend has passed is the drastic difference in the relationship between the Master and Lucy, because the Sound of Drums, she was very much so swept away by the whole, I can essentially rule the universe with this man just because he chose me and thought I was special. Whereas in this one, she's kind of realised that she's just kind of eased into the role of a vicious, murderous dictator. And you can see her really resent the Master for it, for like what she's become under his guidance. And obviously, like, while I think the bruising is a little bit too heavy-handed, and it kind of bodes a darker secret of what the Master's doing. What did you think about the bruising?
Yeah, there's, again, it goes down to that fact, and I don't want to keep beating this dead horse here, but to me, it's a pattern that Russell T Davies really does not know how to write for women, for female characters at all. Okay, I might get some flack for saying this, but Rose is my least favorite companion.
Oh,
she is a terrible character.
Oh,
the way she treats Mickey. Oh my god.
Yeah.
She just casts him to the side. Okay, and that is a man who sticks up for Rose, who is always there for her, who always does what he can. and he doesn't have much to offer, bless him. He's a mechanic. They're clearly from a very working class background, but he will give everything he has for Rose, and she just tosses him to the side and treats him like dirt.
Rose evolves though. Like the Rose at the end of season 4 is not the Rose at the start of season 1. Like there's a distinct difference in those characters, and I feel like Tennant brings out the better side of Rose, whereas Eccleston is a very much so, oh, forget him, he's a loser. Because he always had that resentment towards Mickey, didn't he, in season 1?
He did, yeah, he did. Actually, there was a few moments where they got on quite well, which I quite enjoyed. But yeah, for the most part, there was always like a kind of sort of bickering back and forth. And I think that's just one of... Because in Classic Who, and again, I really haven't seen much of Classic Who, but from what I can gather, the sort of like the romance of it all was never really a part of it. That's very much like a product of bringing it into the 21st century. Like there was never this idea of relationships between the Doctor and the companions, as far as I can tell. Anyway, I may be completely wrong there, but from what I've seen and from what I can tell, that wasn't really a part of it.
No, I don't think it ever was.
Right from the beginning, though, and it's clearly like a big part of the show going forward. And it seems like all of Russell T Davies' female characters, with one notable exception, have just their entire personality and character centered around this one person who is a man. In Lucy's case, it's the Master. For Martha and Rose, it's the Doctor. And I just think they're lesser because of that. The notable exception, obviously, being Donna. She was probably one of my favorite companions and very well written. And I think a big part of that was because she didn't have that relationship and dynamic with the Doctor. She had absolutely no interest in getting romantically involved with him, something which she made very clear many times, which was great and hilarious.
And I think because of that, they got to have this, like there's the moment where Agatha Christie assumes that they're like husband and wife, and they get to have those fun moments where like, whereas if that was a moment with Martha, the camera would have panned round and Agatha Christie would have said something like, oh, let me guess, he doesn't even know you exist, or something like that. And it just would have been a bit naff. Like,
yeah, it really would have. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I just think that is one of like the big downfalls of the Russell T Davies era. But that being said, though, I'm a complete hypocrite because I think that is also present in the Moffat era as well. Not to the extent that it is in Russell T Davies. I think it started that way with Amy and the Doctor, but they very quickly dropped that. And they very quickly decided that, no, we're not going down this route. It's more of a family dynamic instead, which I think actually works very well. That sort of TARDIS team.
There's a very hands-on scene with Amy and the Doctor.
There is, and I hate that scene so much.
It's horrible. It
really is. It's
bordering on the fact that it's like this is still for kids.
Yeah, and as well, she was like what 12, like 5 minutes ago. Yeah, I don't like that scene. Good. But though Stephen Moffat himself has said he really regrets putting that scene in. If he could go back, he would take that out. But I think that's a product of the fact that story just evolved and that they decided, no, we don't want to do this. It's like I said, it's a family. It's it's Rory, it's River, the Doctor, and Amy. That weird dysfunctional family dynamic, which I think works really well. But then again, with Clara and the Doctor, there was clearly a sort of romantic element, which I really enjoyed. Some people didn't, but I actually did enjoy that romantic element there.
I will share my opinions of Clara in another Who-related pod, because I think Clara is not only the worst character in Doctor Who, I think she's the worst character ever put to screen in Doctor Who, and I'm including all the Russell T Davies extras in that.
She's my favourite companion.
Nah, disagree. We've gone a little bit off topic.
Well, you can't disagree with my opinion.
I do, and I'm gonna. So you just got to deal with that. What are your thoughts on this three-parter as a whole, or if there's anything you want to touch on The Last of Time Lords before we sign off?
Hate the face of Bo. Hate it. Can't stand it. No. No,
I like it. I don't mind it.
Makes no sense. Why does he grow into a big head?
Maybe someone decapitates him and he still can't die. Oh, no, but then saying that, in Torchwood, they blow up his whole body and then he's fine.
Yeah, exactly. But then why does he, like, grow into some big alien gigantic head in a jar?
Why does he die, I guess?
Yeah, why does he die? Yeah.
Gets bored.
Gets bored, yeah, has enough.
Knackered, mate. He's a big old head at the end of the world.
Yeah, that's something I don't like, but it is what it is. What else as well? Weird CGI Doctor baby thing. It's just such a bizarre choice.
I've got a question for you about that CGI baby Doctor.
Yeah.
Someone's made him a little pinstripe baby Doctor Who suit. 'Cause he's wearing a little suit, isn't he?
But then when he starts, like, unregenerating, I guess, or glowing back into blue David Tennant, he just grows the suit again.
Yeah.
Like, it just comes back to him somehow, but all right. Psychic network, I guess.
Theoretically, the last time Doctor Who kind of materialised the Doctor in the season 4 finale, he was naked.
He was, yeah. But
maybe they weren't ready for that. Maybe they weren't ready for Tennant's hairy chest yet. Maybe not.
Maybe not.
Look, as a whole, I think this three-parter is, one, a product of its time, two, heavily relies on nostalgia for viewer enjoyment, and three, it's just meant to be fun. Like, I love it because it's just a fun, silly story, and yeah. One thing I wanted to say as well is the when John Sim dies, I don't know what happened with the direction of that, because David Tennant is giving his absolute A game, and John Sim just kind of does a little squint and dies.
So here's a note I have. I'll just read this verbatim. When I first saw it when it first aired back in 2007, the death scene actually made me quite emotional. I remember crying a lot. However, this time I felt absolutely nothing. And I think that was the weird choice to shoot the entire scene in an extreme close-up on John Sim's face and then just have him widen his eyes, squint, and die. Weird choice.
It is an odd choice, but I think David Tennant's performance rescues it.
Oh, David Tennant carries that scene. Yeah, he really does. That's what I'll say. You know, David Tennant, he is great. He's not my favourite Doctor. That being said, I can see why he is the favourite of a lot of people. He absolutely is an incredible actor, and you can see that he embodies that role really well. It's something that he absolutely loves. There is a lot of what I would consider bad or cheesy episodes that he is the saving grace of them, because he just gets some moments to really showcase his talent and really and you get to see what he can really do, and he really convinces you of his tragic past and that he doesn't want to be alone, even though this is an insane maniac who was just killed a third of the population or whatever.
Remove 1/10 of the population.
Exactly, and he's done some terrible, terrible things, and he's betrayed him over and over again. He still wants him to be there. He still doesn't want to be the last of his kind, which now we know he isn't. And well, he is now, or is he? She? I can't keep up.
It's too confusing.
It's way too confusing now. Yeah, I think she is, but she's also like the first of her kind now as well, or something. I don't know. But yeah, it's that. I think this is really what kicked off the whole dynamic of the Doctor and the Master for me. For me, obviously, because I know it does go back to the classic era and everything like that. But again, that's not something I'm familiar with. And going forward, even though some of the episodes, End of Time Part 1 and 2, are not that great, you still do get those amazing moments between the Doctor and the Master. As cheesy as it is, the get out of the way moment from the End of Time is a great moment as well. And then there's the whole dynamic between Missy and 12, which I absolutely love. And all of that was kicked off right from here for me anyway. And yeah, it may not be, for me, the best storyline. It may have elements that let it down. You're absolutely right. It is a product of its time, but I can definitely appreciate it because it gave me the foundations of that relationship, which I've really grown to love and enjoy. So yeah, I'll give it credit for that.
That's fair enough. For me, because I think you know what time it is now. For me,
Chico time.
It's Chico time. You're absolutely right. No, for me, I think this is a fun, nostalgic pod.
Okay, all right, yeah. For me, this is a unenthused pod.
Oh, Nathan.
It was kind of fun to go back and watch it, but more often than not, I was just left dumbfounded and kind of shocked at some of the moments on screen. Let's say the choices as well. Yeah.
Join us next week. For Will Nathan Enjoy Anything on another Happy Pod?
I enjoy Doctor Who. It's one of my favourites. Probably my favourite show.
No, I know. I've spoken about the wrong era with you. I think you get passionate about the later side of it.
I would actually quite like to do the Peter Capaldi's last story arc, that 3-parter, which could be quite good, to be honest.
We'll book it in, mate.
We'll book it in. All right.
Okay. Thank you very much for listening. This has been a bit of a messy episode, but we were talking about 3 things.
Probably a bit of a longer one too, right?
Yeah, it's probably going to be a longer one than usual. Hope you enjoyed it. I would say go and watch it and make your own mind up. It's one of them things where spoilers really don't factor into this. There's no big twists.
If you haven't watched Doctor Who and somehow you managed to get this far into the podcast, first of all, thank you, because what the fuck is wrong with you? But also, I would definitely recommend you watch it. Go back, it's all on Netflix. Go back to season 1 of the revival anyway, and watch it. There's absolutely some episodes and some moments which really don't hold up by today's standards. That being said, you will still have fun, and there is some really great emotional and character-driven storylines along the way. So yeah, I would absolutely recommend it, despite what I've said today.
Okay. Thanks, Nathan. I'll go back and watch them all. Thanks for telling me that.
No problem.
Thank you very much for listening. We'll see you on Sunday.
See you Sunday.
Bye.
Bye. Another happy pod.
Hey, nice.
Another happy pod.